It's time to talk about Xbox this week, because if certain rumours are to be believed, there are some big changes in strategy happening over there, which would have a massive impact on the games industry as a whole. In fact, depending on which version of these rumours you subscribe to, it could mean the end of the console space as we've known it for about the last 30 years. So what am I talking about? Well, over the last week or two, several sources have been reporting that Xbox would be releasing one or more of its previously exclusive titles on multiple platforms in 2024. As is summarised by Andy Robinson over at Video Games Chronicle, this initially stemmed from the Nate the Hate podcast, which Video Games Chronicle say is a show known for breaking games industry related stories. VGC state that the show did not name which title is allegedly coming to competing platforms, but noted that it was in the Game of the Year conversation in the year it was released. Following this, as is noted by a subsequent article from IGN, a Reset Era user, whose name I won't try and pronounce, who also has a good track record for video game announcements, then appeared to confirm that the game in question was Hi-Fi Rush from Tango Gameworks. Then, after this, as if this wasn't enough, some prominent figures in the press, such as Jeff Grubb, Stephen Totilo and Jez Corden, began reporting that there was in fact more than one Xbox exclusive going multi-platform, and that they had heard Sea of Thieves was also going to be released elsewhere. This has understandably led to a massive speculation about Xbox's rationale for this. Rumours range from it's just these two games in isolation that are going to be coming to other platforms, all the way to this is the beginning of Microsoft's Sega-style crash and burn out of the console space. To be honest, there's probably some credence to both theories. As Jez Corden at Windows Central correctly notes, Xbox do already publish a significant amount of games on multiple platforms, such as Minecraft, Fallout 76, and now games like, Call of Duty, Diablo and Overwatch. Plus they have previous for bringing an exclusive game to another console, given that Ori came out on the Switch. Then when you look at the games being talked about for potential multi-platform releases here, you've first got Hi-Fi Rush, which whilst critically acclaimed is a smaller title. Regardless of how good you think it is, it's not Starfield or Halo, so it could be seen on the same sort of level as an Ori. As for Sea of Thieves, that's a multiplayer game which is a bit long in the tooth. I think it's been out for 6 years now. And whilst it has a decent amount of hardcore fans, Xbox could be seeing player numbers dwindling and be wanting to release it on multiple platforms to try and keep it going. So all of that is to say there are rational explanations as to why Xbox would want to bring these two specific games to multiple platforms, which don't involve them, abandoning console manufacturing, and really could actually be seen as nothing out of the ordinary at all. However, when you consider this in conjunction with a couple of other little tidbits that have come out of Xbox recently, might actually suggest there's something more involved going on. Firstly, whilst there's been a significant amount of rumours for a while now about a PlayStation 5 Pro console coming this year, Xbox boss Phil Spencer confirmed back in June 23 that they had no plans to do anything similar to that. And whilst this is perhaps not a death knell on its own, it could be telling. The position that Xbox want to put forward is that a Pro style mid-gen refresh is not necessary, and that their current hardware is sort of sufficient to see them through. Up until recently, I might have been inclined to agree with them. We're still not that far removed from games coming out on both, last gen and current gen. And I think there is definitely still some feeling that the full potential of these current gen consoles hasn't actually been realised yet. However, over the last maybe 6 months to a year, we've started to see the first Unreal 5 games coming out alongside other sort of blockbuster titles using different engines. And we've seen a host of performance issues, even on high-end PCs, never mind consoles. Xbox don't seem to be able to get any of their fucking games running at 60 frames per second on the Series X. Then added to this, since the announcement of Grand Theft Auto 6, there's been reporting that suggests that it's going to push these current gen consoles just as far as Grand Theft Auto 5 pushed the PS3 and 360. And if you remember, Grand Theft Auto 5 did come out right at the end of that generation and really did squeeze every ounce of power that those consoles had to offer out of them. And the rumours regarding how resource intensive GTA 6 is going to be are to the extent that Digital Foundry are reporting that they expect it only to run at 30 frames per second on the current consoles. So what that means is, in all likelihood, we're going to see a market where PlayStation have got a Pro console that can perhaps run flagship games like Grand Theft Auto in an obviously clearly better quality than the leading console Xbox have to offer. That is, of course, assuming that Xbox stick to their guns and don't do a mid-gen refresh. That would just be insane from an Xbox perspective for me. They would be giving PlayStation such an open goal to market every single big game as being very clearly and obviously better on their platform. And if you're someone who knows even just a little bit about games, why the fuck would you buy an Xbox at that point? There's really only two explanations for this that would make sense to me. What we could be seeing is Xbox just giving up on this generation rather than consoles as a whole. You know, similar to how an underperforming Formula 1 team might give up on development of their current car early because it's a lost cause in favour of starting development on their car for the next season. So are Xbox abandoning this generation in favour of getting a head start on the next? Potentially. I mean, if we look back at the 360 generation, which is when Xbox were most successful, one of the reasons that worked so well for them is because they dropped the original Xbox like a bad habit, got a head start on developing the 360 such that they managed to get it out a year earlier and cheaper than the PS3. So it's possible, given that that worked for them before, that they might be trying a similar tactic again here. Alternatively, yeah, it could be that they're just giving up on making consoles and they're not interested anymore, so they're quite happy to just let PlayStation do what they want and get whatever advantage they want on the hardware front. Then to add to this, as I recently heard being discussed on Sacred Symbols First, in an interview with Axios, Disney's head of gaming Sean Shoptaw made some perhaps weird comments. Shoptaw was talking about the exclusivity for Xbox's upcoming big Indiana Jones game, and specifically how it was originally supposed to be multi-platform, but then they later decided to make it exclusive to Xbox. So when talking about this, he says the following: with Xbox still being one of the bigger marketplaces for games, we didn't feel like we were going to be overly exclusionary. We felt like it's still going to reach a broad set of folks, and we felt financially and strategically for the game that made sense at the time. Notice the use of past tense. We felt financially and strategically that it made sense at the time. Now this could just be him misspeaking or perhaps using some unfortunate phrasing, but saying that it made sense at the time kind of makes it sound like Disney regret that decision now. Could it be the case that Disney are seeing Xbox being outsold 3-1 by PlayStation and seeing PlayStation announce that they've sold 50 million PS5s and be wanting some of that install base? Or could it be a sign that they too think that the Xbox as a console is dead and finished? The final weird thing that I wanted to point out, as some of you may know, Xbox recently announced that their studio Arcane, which they own through Bethesda, are going to be making a Blade game. However, there's been a lot of weirdness around people trying to get confirmation of what platforms this may or may not be coming to. It's slightly convoluted, but basically what happened is people approached Marvel and asked what platforms the game's going to be coming to, and instead of answering the question or just saying, you know, we don't know yet, we're still working it out, they kind of went, well, I don't know, maybe go and ask Bethesda, which in and of itself is just fucking nuts, because there will definitely be a written contract somewhere that Marvel would absolutely obviously be privy to, which will say whether this is a multi-platform game or whether it's coming exclusive to Xbox and maybe PC. Nevertheless, people as instructed went to Bethesda and asked what platforms is the game coming to, and they declined to comment. I have to imagine this means that it must be coming to multiple platforms and they just kind of don't want to say that just now because they want people to assume that it's exclusive. As I'm sitting here saying this out loud, it's reminding me of a scenario that Xbox had with one of the Tomb Raider games. I think eventually it transpired that they only had exclusivity on it for a year. When they initially announced it, they were very much less than clear about that and were pretty sheepish when people were asking about it. Of course, in the case of Blade, it could just be that it's early and they're still working out the terms of the deal. You know, it might be the case that Marvel want multiple platforms, but Xbox are maybe making attempts to try and secure exclusivity. I'm not sure I see that working out unless Xbox pony up a shit ton of cash. We know from the recent Insomniac leaks that Marvel's deal with PlayStation was such that games like Spider-Man and upcoming games like Wolverine need to sell X number of copies, otherwise PlayStation owe Marvel a shit ton of money and penalty clauses effectively in the contract. So you would have to assume that Marvel would want to insist on similar terms with Xbox. And the amount of copies that, you know, Spider-Man had to sell was well into the millions. So with Game Pass and the lower install base, I'm not sure that Xbox could guarantee those sales. And this could also be tied to the Indiana Jones game, bearing in mind that Marvel are Disney because Disney are everything. You know, if they're seeing things that are making them regret giving exclusivity on the Indiana Jones game, you can bet your ass they're not going to give them fucking Blade on top of that. So again, there could be rational explanations for all of this. But if you consider that Blade's probably just entering pre-production now, That means we're unlikely to be playing it until 2028, 2029, and that's probably at the earliest, depending on how ambitious it is. 2028 is the year when it's forecast generally that the next generation of consoles will start. So could it be the case that Microsoft can't/won't say what platforms it's coming to, because by the time Blade comes out, there won't be a competitive Xbox on the market? So overall, these occurrences can all be explained rationally and in isolation. You know, it could be that Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves just makes sense for other platforms, but it's otherwise business as usual for Xbox. Maybe they aren't doing pro consoles just purely because they want to get a head start on the next generation, and they're going to go all in with some big play at that time. Maybe Disney's head of games just misspoke when talking about Indiana Jones, and maybe they are still hashing out the Blade deal. But maybe, just maybe, these aren't all isolated events, and instead speak to something much bigger and wider, such as that Xbox are getting out of making consoles and transitioning to just being a third-party publisher. Of course, only time will tell, and I appreciate that it's maybe a little bit tinfoil hat, but it's fun to speculate at the end of the day. So what do you think? Could you see Xbox giving up making hardware and just publishing their games everywhere? Are we going to see Halo on PlayStation next year? Let me know in the comments down below.